What's going on, guys? We're doing a rare Sunday video. I have a chance here. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We've got an interesting move, and we do have some news today, the reason possibly for this move. And we're also going to talk about something interesting. I mentioned this on Friday, that the Bitcoin miners were getting a bounce on the 50 on the RSI. I mentioned CLSK IREN, but there are actually many Bitcoin miners that did exactly that, got a bounce on the 50 RSI, which I think is a good sign for a future run to end October, maybe a Halloween rally. First, let's look at the news that's causing Bitcoin to pump. A fresh US and China trade framework caused crypto to run on October 26 after negotiators said they reached basic consensuses to address tariff and export control disputes following 2 days of talks in Malaysia. And interestingly, on Saturday night, we started seeing Bitcoin run a little bit as well, and things seem to be continuing into this Sunday morning here. Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, says that the side struck a very substantial framework that could avert the threatened 100% U.S. tariffs and secure a deferral of China's rare earth export curbs, with leader-level meetings setting up this week. And a Chinese official says mutual benefit and win-win results define the relationship. And he was urging both sides to properly address each other's concerns and safeguard progress from this year's consultations. Yes, Ox Nobbler, interesting name. Giga bullish news. Bitcoin just went parabolic. And Bitcoin, we'll look at the chart as well. It's doing something interesting. It is right at its 50 MA on the daily, and it did hold up its 50 MA on the weekly. Now, I will leave that article down below for you if you're interested in it. But let's look at some charts. First off, one thing I saw on the weekly for Bitcoin was we did get a bounce on the 50 RSI on Bitcoin on the weekly. We got our pullback basically to this 50 MA, which we have held up in the past. In past pullbacks, this was Mt. Gox. We went from 74,000 down to 50,000. Everyone was mega bullish at this point. People became ultra bearish at this point. Basically the opposite of what they should be doing, like always. And sure enough, we got a bounce, a nice run. We got a bounce again in 2025, and we basically got a bounce again here at the 50 MA on the weekly. This is a crucial level to hold. Let me show you last cycle. We got a bounce and a hold, another bounce. Once we broke, we came down, got a retest, failed to break above the 50 on the weekly, and party was over. Crypto winter ensued. Now, people are saying there won't be a pullback, won't be a major crypto winter. I think there won't be a major crypto winter in this cycle, but I do think there will be pullbacks that we can embrace, that we can learn to love, that we can accumulate more Bitcoin for cheaper. That is always the goal. People wishing for no pullbacks either have their bags fully packed or are not really looking at the long term, at the decades from now prices of Bitcoin, and how many multiples you can get buying at some deep discounted prices, buying at fear levels. Even buying here, looking 10 years ahead, you know, things are going to look amazing. But the lower you can get them, the more pain, the more fear. If you can buy at those points, those are always the best points to buy. Sorry, I'm getting a little preachy. It is Sunday after all. Now, looking at Bitcoin on the daily, we do have the 50 MA. We got rejected from it last time. Earlier the other week, we got rejected at the 50 MA. We were not able to clear it after we bounced off the 50 MA on the weekly. It's not showing up here because we're on the daily chart, but here's the 50 MA and the 200 MA. Bitcoin is right at the 50 MA now. Keep an eye on it. If we can break over, I do think we're going to work towards all-time highs this month. I think it's possible. We have the rate cut coming, which the market has likely priced in and is fully expecting, you could argue. But I do think that'll cause it to be a less volatile week. The market knows kind of what to expect from the Fed. Of course, they're worrying about future rate cuts or future pauses will be important. How hawkish or dovish are they? But I do think if I had to predict if we're going to go up or down next week, I do think we're going to go up. Things are looking pretty good. Bitcoin held that 50 MA on the weekly, which is a very important level to hold. And the Bitcoin miners did something very interesting. Let's look at them. Now, this wasn't just like one Bitcoin miner or two like I showed you guys last Friday here. A lot of Bitcoin miners bounced right at the 50 on the RSI. It wouldn't be very intriguing if it was just like one or two, but it is literally like all of the Bitcoin miners I looked at. I didn't look at every single one. There are probably some that didn't hold this, but every single one that I bothered to look at bounced right at the 50 RSI. Now, it looks like CleanSpark broke its trend line on the daily. However, when you go to the weekly, it is still in place. It is still holding up. So we'll see what the market thinks of this. You know, it holds up its weekly trend line, but it definitely did break its trend line on the daily perspective. It did hold up an important level, bounced at the 1640 area, which was a previous resistance. But let me show you some of the other Bitcoin miners that bounced right at the 50 on the RSI. Here's a BTBT on the daily, got a bounce on the 50, right basically at the 50. And its trend is still intact. It got a bounce right at its trend line. Trends are still intact. We got a bounce on the RSI on the 50. Bitcoin is working on breaking the 50 MA on the daily. I think things are set for a good run throughout this week. Not to mention on the weekend here, if we can get Bitcoin to continue running into Monday, I do think we'll see a nice pop from the Bitcoin miners. Not only BTBT, but we also got a bounce on Marathon here right at the 50. Bounced on that RSI at the 50. And of course RIOT as well. We got a bounce on the 50 on RIOT as well. A lot of Bitcoin miners bounced at the 50 on the RSI. While it's not something I'm always looking at, while it's not something that if you see like one stock do it, it's the end all be all indicator. When all stocks in a certain sector are doing it, I think that tells you something. A 50 RSI bounce occurs when the relative strength index RSI falls towards the 50 level, then reverses back up, like what we saw with all of those Bitcoin miners, suggesting a continuation of a bullish trend. And they are in a bullish trend, there's no doubting that. Look at their uptrends that most of them are still supporting. CleanSpark on the weekly, following its trend, although on the daily, failed and broke it. A lot of these other Bitcoin miners, BTBT, you saw that trend was still intact with this pullback, with this recent drop. Trend still intact. They are in a bullish trend, and they did get a bounce at the 50 on the RSI. The 50 center line of the RSI acts as a neutral zone, with movements above the 50 indicating bullish momentum, movements below the 50 indicating bearish momentum. We bounced at the 50. Hopefully we can continue some bullish momentum during a strong uptrend, which these Bitcoin miners are definitely in a strong uptrend lately. The RSI tends to remain in the upper range, typically between 40 and 90. The 40 to 50 zone often functions as a dynamic support level. Confirm with other indicators. Confirm the bounce with other tools, such as certain candlestick patterns or a rejection of a moving average, such as a bounce rejection on the 50 MA. And while a lot of the Bitcoin miners are far away from their 50 MA, their 200 MA, we didn't get a bounce there because they are in these massive uptrends. They are far away from their moving averages, although they have gotten closer in recent time because of this recent dip. What else can we look at? Well, levels. We bounced at a certain level, a previous level of resistance that flipped as support while we got a bounce on the 50 RSI. So I'm not a betting man, but if I had to bet, I would bet that the Bitcoin miners are going to have a good week next week. Of course, it depends on what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin continues to run today and then early morning Monday starts tanking, well, the Bitcoin miners are going to care more about recent history and the drop early morning than they are going to care about Bitcoin going up over the weekend, even if it is on a higher price with a pullback on Monday than it was on Friday. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think October is going to end in the red? This will be the first red October on a peak year. Or are we going to see a repeat of history with a October that turns green? A green October. There is still a week left. Where Bitcoin is right now is basically where Bitcoin started the month. Here's the 1st of October, where we pretty much started running in the beginning of October. Then we got our pullback. Negative towards the end of the month. There's a chance we flip green. If we can break this 50 MA on the daily, that is the crucial indicator of if we're going to see a green October or not. If we can break this 50, see gains from the 1st of October at about 114,000. If we can break over this, we're going to have a green October. If we get rejected at it again, we got rejected once. If we get rejected again, maybe October will turn red. I'd say there's a higher chance of seeing a green October than a red October, but let me know what you guys think. Do you think the month is going to end good, bad? Do you think it doesn't matter and you're looking at the bigger picture? Are you following the cycle and plan to trim into any strength over the next couple of months? Have you been trimming? Have you been preparing cash for any future pullbacks, any future weakness, to jump on it and take advantage? Thanks as always for watching, guys. I'll see you probably Monday.